Benavidez, Morrell, who wins?
It's gonna be a good fight. It's gonna be a good fight. 50-50 fight.
And I think that it's going to be a war. In my eyes, I say it as a 50-50 fight.
These fighters, I think David Morrell may have needed, one or two more real tests before he really, build the resolve to be able to handle a guy with the ability, the power.
As the much-anticipated clash between David Benavidez and David Morrell draws near, set to erupt this Saturday, February 1st, at the electrifying T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, the boxing world is buzzing with heated debates and expert opinions. With two unbeaten warriors named David stepping into the ring, fans are guaranteed fireworks, but analysts are divided on who walks out victorious. Among those offering insights is former world champion Shawn Porter, who has made his stance clear. He's leaning toward David Benavidez in what promises to be a fiercely contested 12-round main event. Porter, who's never been shy in breaking down fighters with pinpoint analysis, explained that Benavidez's depth of professional experience gives him the upper hand in this matchup. While Morrell is undeniably talented and explosive, with a perfect 11-0 record, he hasn't yet been tested under the type of grueling conditions Benavidez has weathered throughout his career. Porter noted that Benavidez's time in the trenches, battling through adversity and lengthy wars, has molded him into a fighter capable of handling the chaos and fatigue that often defines championship rounds. That level of battle-tested durability, Porter argues, is something Morrell simply hasn't had the opportunity to develop yet. But Porter wasn't blind to Benavidez's recent shortcomings. In fact, he acknowledged that despite victories over big names like Demetrius Andrade and Caleb Plant, there's a lingering skepticism among fans and critics. Andrade was clearly past his physical prime when Benavidez faced him, and Plant, though skilled, had already suffered a decisive defeat at the hands of Canelo Alvarez. These wins, though technically impressive, haven't necessarily elevated Benavidez's stock the way dominant performances over elite competition should. And that opens the door for questions about just how dominant Benavidez truly is. Further adding to the uncertainty was Benavidez's most recent outing against Alexander Gvozdyk, where some glaring flaws surfaced. While Benavidez ultimately secured the win, his struggle against Gvozdyk's power and sustained pressure revealed cracks in his armor. Observers noted that he looked fatigued down the stretch, and his inability to maintain control throughout the later rounds showed vulnerability, a chink Morrell could potentially exploit. Despite those concerns, Porter still gives Benavidez a narrow edge, estimating the fight as a 55-45 split in favor of the more seasoned fighter. What excites Porter the most about this matchup is the dynamic contrast between the two fighters' journeys and skill sets. Dubbed David vs. David, the bout pits Benavidez's proven mettle and maturity against Morrell's untested explosiveness and raw potential. Porter emphasized that Benavidez appears to be naturally growing into the 175-pound division, showing comfort and power at the heavier weight, while Morrell still has much to prove under the pressure of a marquee event.
That one.
That's 50-50 right there. If anything, 55-45 for Benavidez. I love David versus David. I love everything about the fight. The thing I feel that Benavidez has over Morrell is experience, is true strength. Both of those guys are big guys, but I think Benavidez is more of the natural 175-pounder.
Yeah, Morrell's such a high-level technical fighter, but Jose mentioned what you just mentioned, they feel like the experience is gonna eventually show through. I don't know, take me into that, how experience can trump talent in technicality like that.
You know what? The thing that I know for this fight, when you are in a competitive fight that's gonna go 12 rounds, of course you're prepared for the 12.
Shawn Porter has offered a detailed breakdown of what he believes could be a turning point in David Morrell's young career, a showdown against the relentless and physically imposing David Benavidez. Porter emphasizes a critical detail that could define the fight: Morrell has yet to face an opponent who brings the type of non-stop aggression and cruiserweight-like frame that Benavidez offers. While Morrell showed excellent poise and control in his light heavyweight debut against Eidos Yerbasinali last August, Porter argues that he was never placed under the kind of pressure Benavidez is expected to unleash when the two meet this Saturday night in Las Vegas. Yerbasinali may carry more single-shot knockout power than Benavidez, But he didn't bring the sustained volume or physical suffocation that has earned Benavidez his nickname, the Mexican Monster. What makes this matchup so compelling, according to Porter, is the unpredictability of how Morrell will react when constantly pushed back, something we haven't seen happen in his professional career. Benavidez's relentless forward motion could force Morrell into deep waters. However, if Benavidez charges forward too recklessly, he runs the risk of walking into Morrell's precision counters or absorbing punishing body shots that could change the momentum quickly. Morrell is not only fast and explosive, but he's also technically polished, making him a real threat if Benavidez leaves openings. Despite Benavidez's confidence going into the fight, his own debut at 175 pounds raised eyebrows. Against Alexander Gvozdyk, Benavidez looked sharp early but visibly faded after the 8th round. By the time the 12th round arrived, he appeared physically exhausted and barely survived a late onslaught from Gvozdyk, absorbing several clean combinations in the final 30 seconds. Porter points out that while Benavidez is nearly equal to Morrell in both speed and power, his success in this fight will hinge on his ability to box effectively for all 12 rounds without breaking down. This bout presents a unique mental and physical test for both fighters, but especially for Morrell, who has yet to face adversity at this level in his pro career. One of the biggest unknowns surrounding this fight is whether Benavidez can go the distance against someone as youthful, strong, and untested as Morrell without being knocked down or stopped. Benavidez's run at 168 pounds was filled with wins against older, smaller fighters, but that approach didn't translate seamlessly when he stepped up in weight. His struggle with Gvozdyk exposed stamina issues and strategic lapses. Although Benavidez attributed some of those issues to a lingering hand injury, many critics saw that as an excuse rather than an explanation. They argue that his performance revealed real gaps in conditioning and durability, gaps that Morrell may be able to exploit if he focuses on Benavidez's vulnerable midsection and forces him into a pace he can't sustain.
And man, how do you think Benavidez does? Your gym mate a week after you fight. How do you think that fight goes with Morrell, man?
I think David, he's looking very good. I've been in the gym with him for the past few weeks, and he's been looking great shape, doing some amazing things in the ring. Like always, David's a monster. So I think he'll take care of business February 1st. I think he might even get the stoppage against David.
When Porter was asked whether Benavidez could repeat the kind of early stoppage he scored against Demetrius Andrade in 2023, where he secured a dominant finish in 6 rounds, he expressed doubt. While acknowledging Benavidez's finishing ability, Porter speculated that it would likely take 8 or 9 rounds this time, primarily because Morrell is not only naturally bigger than Andrade, but also younger, fresher, and physically tougher. According to Porter, this isn't just a matchup of fists, it's a battle of endurance, ring IQ, and the ability to adapt under intense pressure. He emphasized that both men will need to dig deep, as this could easily turn into a war of attrition, where resilience becomes the deciding factor. For Benavidez, caution will be paramount. He can't expect to bulldoze through Morrell the way he did at super middleweight, especially not without absorbing significant risk in return. The thinness of his resume is finally under a microscope, and many believe this fight will determine whether he truly belongs among the elite at 175 pounds. Morrell, on the other hand, enters the ring with momentum and the hunger to shake up the boxing landscape. While the betting odds favor Benavidez, the actual outcome feels far less certain. Interestingly, boxing superstar Canelo Alvarez, who has history with both fighters, has publicly labeled this as a true 50-50 bout, acknowledging that it could go either way depending on whose game plan holds stronger under pressure. Benavidez, who once chased a high-profile fight with Canelo at 168 pounds, ultimately failed to land the opportunity. That prompted his move to light heavyweight, where he debuted with a somewhat shaky decision win over Gvozdyk. Morrell also recently entered the division, scoring a points victory over Yerba Sinali that was dominant, but not particularly grueling. Not everyone in the boxing world shares the same vision for the outcome. Cuban Olympic gold medalist Andy Cruz has thrown his support behind his compatriot, boldly predicting that Morrell will win by knockout. Cruz drew parallels between Morrell's calm, relaxed demeanor and his own, arguing that Benavidez appears tense and heavily burdened by public expectations, a dangerous mental state when facing a confident and slick technician like Morrell. Cruz also pointed out that Benavidez never aggressively pursued this matchup. In fact, Morrell had been calling him out since 2022, with little response. This has led to speculation that Benavidez may have intentionally avoided Morrell due to stylistic concerns and the risk involved. For years, Benavidez has feasted on fighters who were smaller, slower, or past their prime. A loss to a young and dangerous opponent like Morrell wouldn't just cost him the fight. It could shatter his hard-earned reputation and unravel the narrative that he's the rightful heir to Canelo Alvarez's throne. Many fans have long seen Benavidez as the biggest threat to Canelo.
David Morrell is a guy that you can't take lightly, you know what I'm saying? He's a great fighter. He's up there for a reason, you know what I mean? One of the best Cubans out right now, so yeah, it's going to be a great fight, you know, but I just feel like David is one of those guys too who's a monster and just doesn't let anyone take it from him, you know what I mean? And when he's in there, he's going in there for the kill, and of course, you know, I feel like Morrell is maybe going to be his toughest opponent yet.
David Benavidez has rightfully earned the fearsome nickname the Mexican Monster for his aggressive, high-pressure fighting style, relentless forward movement, and ability to break down opponents with a vicious combination of volume and precision. His reputation is built on overwhelming power, non-stop offense, and a ruthless instinct to finish fights. Yet, according to rising super middleweight contender Diego Pacheco, who sparred with Benavidez just 3 months ago, there's a critical element of Benavidez's skill set that often goes unnoticed by fans and analysts alike: his defense. In a recent interview, Pacheco shed light on this lesser appreciated side of Benavidez's boxing craft, and his admiration was clear as his expression shifted with genuine excitement. When asked what surprised him most about sharing rounds with the Mexican powerhouse, Pacheco didn't hesitate. He pointed directly to Benavidez's defensive instincts. While most observers focus solely on his offensive arsenal, Pacheco emphasized that Benavidez is far more elusive and technically responsible than people give him credit for. One of the key observations Pacheco made was about Benavidez's posture and movement. Although Benavidez typically maintains an upright stance, a posture that might lead some to assume he's easy to hit, his ability to subtly lean back, roll with shots, and avoid clean punches is remarkably sharp. Pacheco described how Benavidez instinctively pulls back just enough to make opponents miss by inches, only to immediately snap back with a quick and accurate counterpunch. It's a rhythm and timing that only seasoned fighters develop, and Benavidez, despite his aggressive style, has clearly refined that aspect of his game. Pacheco went on to explain that Benavidez doesn't rely on flashy head movement or excessive footwork to avoid danger. Instead, he uses distance control, quick reflexes, and a deep understanding of timing to keep himself defensively sound even while pressing forward. This is what makes him such a nightmare to deal with in the ring. He's not only dishing out punishment but also minimizing the amount he takes in return. His defense isn't just reactionary, it's built into the rhythm of his attack. This ability to blend offensive pressure with sneaky defensive skills makes Benavidez a more complete fighter than his public image might suggest. Fans often celebrate his relentless output and capacity to walk through his opponents, but Pacheco believes that what separates him from others in the division is how intelligently he does it. He's not reckless, he's calculated. His pressure is measured, and his defense is strategic, allowing him to impose his will without unnecessarily exposing himself to counters. In Pacheco's words, sparring with Benavidez is like being in the ring with a fighter who's always 2 steps ahead. The moment you think you've found an opening, he's already adjusted and is ready to capitalize on your mistake.
I think he has a really good jab. You know, he's a good fighter. He keeps his distance really well, so that I feel like he's gonna make it hard for David in the early rounds. But like we saw with Caleb Plant, you know, Caleb Plant was doing a great job boxing the first few rounds when he fought David, but then David just has that chip in his shoulder where he's just coming forward. Even on the clinches, he's still punching. You know, he's still getting punches in, and I feel like when you're boxing a guy like David and he just keeps coming forward no matter what you do, it just makes it hard mentally for you to keep that same game plan and stick to it, because you have a monster like him throwing big punches coming.
Diego Pacheco further emphasized that one of the most impressive qualities about David Benavidez, beyond his power, speed, and ring IQ, is his relentless commitment to growth and improvement. During his conversation with reporter Marcos Villegas on Zittel, Pacheco opened up about Benavidez's behind-the-scenes habits that many fans and even fellow fighters might not be aware of. According to Pacheco, what sets Benavidez apart isn't just what he does during fights, but the intense focus and discipline he brings into the gym every single day. Pacheco revealed that Benavidez is meticulous about his training, going as far as recording every single one of his sessions. Whether it's sparring, mid-work, or technical drills, Benavidez ensures nothing goes undocumented. After each session, he dedicates time to carefully re-watch the footage, not just for highlights or motivational purposes, but with a deeply analytical eye. He zeroes in on the most minute details, things many fighters might overlook, such as foot positioning, hip rotation, shoulder placement, and even the timing of his weight transfers. It's this commitment to refining even the smallest elements of his craft that, in Pacheco's eyes, shows how serious and methodical Benavidez is about evolving as a fighter. What truly stood out to Pacheco, however, was Benavidez's generous and collaborative spirit in the gym. Despite being one of the top names in the sport and carrying the aura of a feared knockout artist, Benavidez doesn't keep his knowledge to himself. On the contrary, Pacheco described him as someone who was always eager to help those around him grow. Throughout their time training together, Benavidez consistently offered Pacheco advice, breaking down movements, correcting techniques, and sharing small adjustments that could make a big difference in execution. Pacheco was struck by how approachable and detail-oriented Benavidez is when it comes to mentorship. Whether it's explaining how to step in and out of range more efficiently, how to set up feints, or how to transition from offense to defense smoothly, Benavidez never hesitates to give useful, actionable input. He doesn't just train with intensity, he trains with intention, and that mindset carries over into how he uplifts others around him. For Pacheco, who is himself an emerging talent in the super middleweight division, being around someone like Benavidez is more than just a learning opportunity, it's a masterclass in how greatness is built not just with talent, but with humility, curiosity, and constant self-evaluation. It became clear to him that Benavidez isn't resting on past achievements or public hype. He's constantly chasing perfection, breaking down every frame of his own footage with the goal of becoming sharper, smarter, and more dangerous with each passing day. This rare combination of elite talent, relentless self-improvement, and a team-first mentality is part of what makes Benavidez not just a Mexican monster in the R.
And it's going to be, I think Morrell's going to have to find that shot that really, not only drops, but, concuss. He got to knock David Benavidez out. And there's fighters you can make quit. I don't think neither one of these fighters you can make quit. Sometimes you got to knock them out. And I think this is one of those type of fights where, in order to secure victory, in order to secure victory, one of these guys is going to have to end it with inside the distance. And I think when you look at, what they bring to the table, David Benavidez is going to have a little reach inside advantage.
Gabriel Rosado believes that David Morrell's persistent taunting and psychological warfare have lit a fire under the WBC interim light heavyweight champion David Benavidez, bringing out a more focused, driven version of the Mexican monster as the clock ticks down to their explosive showdown this Saturday night. According to Rosado, this 12-round main event isn't just another fight, it's a statement opportunity for Benavidez, who has been challenged both personally and professionally by Morrell's constant jabs. Rosado predicts that Benavidez, fueled by the trash talk and underestimation, will come out swinging with his signature high-volume assault, aiming to break Morrell down and finish him before the final bell. What makes this dynamic even more intense is that Benavidez is not used to being disrespected or painted as one-dimensional, as Morrell has repeatedly done in the build-up to this fight. Morrell, the WBA regular light heavyweight champion, has publicly expressed his skepticism about Benavidez's style, often calling it predictable and linear. He seems almost puzzled by the fact that Benavidez, despite his success, hasn't diversified his tactics over the years. For Benavidez, who bulldozed through opponents at 168 pounds with size and relentless offense, this fight presents a whole new level of danger. Unlike many of his past rivals, Morrell is neither undersized nor lacking in skill. He's young, confident, technically polished, and not afraid to go toe-to-toe with someone who has dominated lower divisions. This will be Benavidez's first real test against an opponent who is not only physically formidable but also strategically intelligent and determined to expose his flaws. Rosado, having known Benavidez personally for years, still favors him to win but cautions against taking Morrell lightly. "I like Benavidez in this fight, but you can't count Morrell out," Rosado told Fight Hub TV. He stressed that it's Morrell who truly needed this fight to elevate his status, noting that Benavidez didn't have to accept the challenge. "Morrell hit the jackpot with this one," Rosado remarked. "Nobody was really calling him out. Benavidez didn't need this, but he said, "Let's do it." However, there's a missing piece in that narrative. Benavidez avoided engaging with Morrell's callouts for nearly 2 years, ever since 2022, raising questions about whether he truly welcomed this fight or was pressured into it by public demand. Rosado believes Morrell's aggressive trash talk has provoked something different inside Benavidez, a psychological trigger that could either elevate or disrupt his performance. "No one usually talks to Benavidez like that," Rosado noted, pointing to Morrell's repeated challenges questioning Benavidez's toughness, courage, and punching power. Those comments haven't gone unnoticed, and Rosado senses that Benavidez will step into the ring with something to prove, not just to the boxing world, but to himself.
I think one of the, more gifted fighters that Benavidez has faced. I think David Morrell comes in with a lot of talent. And you got a guy that has a talent like both of these guys, and they rise to the occasion. It's the moment that really gets these guys up, and I think this is the type of fight that you can say it's going to bring the best out of both of these guys, man.
That's a wrap for today's video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.